Unless you've been living under a rock, which right now you might be.
Don't visit households with multiple people. Don't go to your daughter's house. Mom doesn't want to be alone. I understand.
So I take it back. Unless you've been living under a rock before everything began and had absolutely no TV.
2020 has certainly been a tough year for all of us.
2020 has been a difficult year for all of us.
2020 has definitely been a year for all of us.
2020 has been a difficult year for all of us.
2020 has been a hard year for all of us. Hard for our doctors and nurses and truck drivers, grocery store workers. It's been hard for the teachers and students and parents. Hard for those who have had to stay isolated to stay safe.
You know, 2020 was quite the year for all of us. And if you think that 2020 was bad, I hate to break it to you, but
it's not over yet.
Health services struggle to cope with the second wave. Hungary has extended its state of emergency until February, allowing the government to enforce partial lockdown measures. And the US Food and Drug Administration has approved the first COVID-19 home testing kit. It provides results within 30 minutes.
But here's what I know.
in the words of Francis Bacon, the hidden hand in the colonization scheme of America, knowledge is power. And in the words of the prophet Daniel, that Francis Bacon himself helped to translate,
"But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased."
And then in Revelation we read,
"Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666.
Who is God? God. Before I started these videos, I thought I knew the answer to that question. Now,
I am here.
To be completely honest,
Put off thy shoes from off thy feet.
I'm not so sure.
For the place whereon thou standest is holy ground.
Is this God? Exodus 3:14 tells us so. Interestingly, 3:14 looks a lot like pi.
I am the God of thy father.
A mathematical integer whose first 144 digits
God of Abraham.
sum to 6,
The God of Isaac.
6,
and the God of Jacob.
6. We're told that the Bible is the infallible Word of God. In case you're not familiar with the definition of infallible, it means incapable of making mistakes or being wrong, or never failing, always effective. We'll get to the last definition given to us by the dictionary a little later. But for now, have you ever wondered who wrote the Bible? And how did it become infallible? Shortly after creation, the earliest scriptures are said to be handed down from generation to generation orally. Circa 2000 BC, the book of Job, the oldest book of the Bible, is written. Circa 1500 BC, the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments are given to Moses. He would also go on to complete the first 5 books of the Old Testament, also known as the Torah. Fast forward to circa 300 BC. All of the original Old Testament Hebrew books have now been collected and recognized as official canonical books. Circa 250 BC, the Septuagint, a popular Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, which included 39 Old Testament books and 14 books of the Apocrypha, is produced. Circa AD 45 to 100, the original 27 books of the Greek New Testament are written. This is followed by Marcion of Sinope's New Testament, deemed heretical by the Church as he rejected the teachings of the Old Testament, as well as denied that Jesus was in fact the Jewish Messiah. Instead, he viewed Jesus as an alien god who was sent to the earth to reveal the truth about existence. This prompted Orthodox Christians to establish a New Testament canon. Circa 312 AD, the Codex Vaticanus, considered the oldest Bible, would be assembled, ordered by Emperor Constantine. It is eventually kept in the Vatican Library, locked away in Rome. Now let's jump to about 1200 years later. The year is 1530 AD, 7 years before Suleiman the Magnificent would rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, thus starting the countdown of Daniel's 77s, or 490 years, with the last 7 years being dedicated to the tribulation of mankind, and then the end. Interestingly, 483 years from 1537 brings us to exactly 2020, and we all know how that went. But let's get back to 1530. The Bible is first translated into French by the French Catholic Kabbalist, number mystic, magic practitioner, and college professor at the Collège de Saint-Bob, Jacques Lefebvre d'Edibos. He would become a guiding light for the soon-to-come Protestant Reformation, as well as for the newly enrolled Inigo Lopez, who would enroll at this school and for the rest of his life would be known as Ignatius of Loyola, the founder and first superior general of the Jesuit order, or the Illuminati, which he would go on to found exactly 4 years later at the Church of Saint Pierre of Montemart in Paris, France. 23 years later, the Frenchman Robert Estienne would publish the first Bible with numbers and chapter divisions. They are still in use today. 7 years later, the first Bible with number and chapter divisions would be translated into English. In 1560, it would be known as the Geneva Bible and would be fundamental to the Puritans and the American colonies and a cornerstone to the American Revolution. 51 years after the Geneva Bible would be published, the bisexual, but mostly homosexual, King James of Scotland and England, coincidentally born 138,777 days from the birth of Donald J. Trump, fascinated with witchcraft, which he considered a branch of theology, obsessed with the concern that witches were plotting against him, he would personally see to the torture and execution of thousands of women, and along with the Freemasons and the Rosicrucian Brotherhood, would go on to publish the most famous and sold book throughout all of world history. With over 6 billion copies in print, the 1611 King James authorized version of the Bible would be released. But why?
So tell us very quickly a little bit about the translation of the King James Bible. It was done by teams of translators, correct?
Exactly.
And why was it being retranslated at all?
For a couple reasons, probably. I mean, there are probably many reasons why they wanted to do it. So there was a new king on the throne at the time, James I, the James who will go on to lend his name to the translation. And the previous official translation, so to speak, of the English Church at the time was this translation known as the Bishop's Bible. But it was widely regarded as being not a very good translation. And then there was another competing English translation known as the Geneva Bible. But James I basically hated this translation.
That one didn't allow for the divine right of kings,
exactly.
correct? Which is a problem.
It had these marginal notes that would say that if the king was wicked, you could just rise up and overthrow him.
No, I didn't like that. I didn't like that. But the King James Bible is also well known among English scholars for beautiful turns of phrases.
Absolutely.
Like a drop in the bucket, and some of these phrases.
Skin of our teeth, the world turned upside down, things like that.
We still use these.
But English scholars weren't the only ones familiar with the writings of the King James Bible. A certain English playwright of the time was also very familiar with the book, as evidenced by his work.
I'm John Harris, Reverend Dr. John Harris, and I'm curator of the historic Bibles here in the Bible Studies collection. We certainly believe that this Bible belonged to Shakespeare. It was given to the Bible Society in 1960. It was given to us by a man called William Lee, who gave it to us saying, this is a 1607 Geneva Bible, and it once belonged to Shakespeare. Now I have here the record of the gift at the time. In parting with this Bible, Mr. Lee stated that it had belonged to William Shakespeare, that it had been passed down through the family of Shakespeare's sister, Joan Hart. Mr. Lee stated that in the 1870s, a member of his family had received it from Tabitha Griffith, daughter of Ellen Hart. It has inside it quite a number of underlined verses. Here's a phrase underlined here from Genesis chapter 3. This is about the fall of Adam and Eve. Knowing good and evil. The very interesting thing about that verse and every other underlined verse in here is that they all appear in his plays after 1607. There are many, many places, hundreds, thousands, as I said, where you can connect Shakespeare with the Bible, and you can see that he loved it, you can see that he knew it. He sometimes can put verses together from more than one part of the Bible. He loved the Psalms. They were, of course, of great beauty to him, and he quotes the Psalms a great deal, probably more than any other book. Never did he find any of his plots from the Bible. The storylines come from contemporary sources, they come from history, they come from Ovid, from the classical writers, but not from the Bible. But the allusions, the figures of speech, come so often from the Bible. But what you would say is that the great themes of Shakespeare are the themes of the Bible. The great themes of Shakespeare are sin and damnation, sin and redemption, hell, the end of time, the apocalypse, all of these, justice and mercy. These are the great themes of Shakespeare, and they are the themes of the Bible. And I know that the Bible was in his mind and in his heart. And this is the closest Bible, the closest thing, in fact, to Shakespeare that probably exists in the world. And so it is an extremely important Bible. We believe that we have a very important treasure here, and we're very proud and pleased to own it. He loved the Psalms.
All his colleagues were involved in the gunpowder plot. Therefore, he had to write things in code. Now, to convey who he really was, he couldn't say he was Guy Fawkes or whatever, he had to put a message in the Bible to who he was, or a book that people would read for generations to come. Otherwise, it would never be found. When he was 46 years of age, Shakespeare wrote this in the James I edition of the Holy Bible, and he was 46 years of age. This is Psalm 46, and if you read 46 words forward, you get the word shake, and if you go 46 words backward, you get spear, which equals Shakespeare.
While Psalm 46 sums out to Sir Francis across 3 of the Francis Bacon ciphers. Even stranger, Sir Francis Bacon matches the value of one of Shakespeare's nicknames, the Bard of all time, as well as translator of the King James. So the question is, did Shakespeare write Shakespeare? Manly P. Hall certainly doesn't think so.
The first edition of the King James Bible, which was edited by Francis Bacon and prepared under Masonic supervision, bears more Mason's marks than the Cathedral of Strasbourg. Manly P. Hall. From a lecture on Rosicrucian and Masonic origins 1929. In the English-speaking world there are 2 supreme masterpieces of literature. Both, oddly enough, were first published within 12 years of each other in the then relatively small, by today's standards, city of London, England. The King James Authorized Version of the Bible was published in 1611, and the first folio edition of the collected works of William Shakespeare was published in 1623. Odder still, the facts known about the authors of both of these works present irreconcilable differences with the works they supposedly authored. William Smedley exhibited remarkable insight into Bacon's mind and objectives. There is evidence to support his contention that Bacon rewrote the translator's manuscripts to produce the supreme literary masterpiece of the King James Authorized Version of the Bible. As to how persuasive this evidence is, I leave this to the reader's judgment. Smedley said that there was only one writer of the period, Francis Bacon, who was capable of turning the phrases with that matchless style, which is the great charm of the Shakespeare plays. Whoever that stylist was, it was to him that James handed over the manuscripts, which he received from the translators. That man made havoc of much of the translation, but he produced a result which, on its literary merits, is without equal. Although the other evidence is striking, when all things are considered, this seems the strongest evidence for Smedley's claim that Francis Bacon was responsible for the literary masterpiece that is the King James Bible.
Peter, Sir Francis Bacon was known as a philosopher and also as a poet, but he got some other titles as well. He was called the founder of Freemasonry and the father of the Rosicrucians. What was all that about?
He set up different treasure trails, and I find the principal treasure trail is also a method of training us in his method to discover all things. His principal training for that, practical method, a practical example, I mean, is the search for the author of Shakespeare plays.
Yes.
Who is that author? Because that's analogous to the author of the universe. Who is the author of the universe?
Right. Yes.
But at the same time, one could say, eventually say, well, Bacon was the main author of Shakespeare plays.
Yes.
Other people say, well, maybe, and others will say, oh, impossible.
But
But
in just teaching you to ask that question.
So I was going to ask a question.
Yeah,
and as you search, you find out other things that
Yes.
wouldn't otherwise have been discovered.
Yeah.
It's just of huge, huge value.
Yeah.
I mean, Freemasonry has existed for a long, long time in different countries of the world.
Yeah.
So, and it was alive and well in England right from the start of Queen Elizabeth's reign. But Bacon's Rosicrucian group, which he inherited from a group before him, you know, he then became the master of it, Grand Master of it. And he brought into it much more the poetic side and his philosophy into it. And that became the historical Rosicrucians. But they then infiltrated, it would seem infiltrated, Freemasonry, or were Freemasons already themselves, as I think Bacon was.
Yeah.
And brought these higher ideals into it to try to make Freemasonry not a sort of national thing that it had been up to then, but a universal thing.
Yes.
So anybody of any nationality, any creed, could be a Freemason.
Yeah.
All you had to state when you joined is I believe in a universal being.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what name.
It wasn't dependent on religion.
No, it didn't matter what your religious practice was.
Yeah.
Bacon was a refounder of Freemasonry.
Yeah.
Key to that is he was given the title towards the end of his life of Viscount St Alban.
Right.
Not St Albans.
St Alban.
St Alban, named the saint.
Yes.
Normally you'd have a title named after a place.
That's right. Yeah.
So his title, St Alban, is unique. Not happened before or since, as far as I know. And why? Why St Alban? Well, St Alban is known historically to the Freemasons as the founder of Freemasonry.
Right.
and then if you follow what's written in by modern Freemasonry, you'll find there are all the clues there, including ciphers, because that's nothing about Bacon. He was a great intelligence, a cipherist, cipher mathematics. He saw as one of the highest sciences of all that look into the spiritual laws of the universe.
Fascinating, Peter. Thank you so much. I could talk to you forever about this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fascinating indeed. From the Francis Bacon Research Trust, cipher was extremely important to Francis Bacon. Not only did he regard mathematics, number and geometry, as a vitally important and metaphysical science, and one of the essential forms of things, but he also considered that elusive or parabolical pose, using fables, parables, and symbolism, was a sacred and venerable thing. Especially, seeing religion itself hath allowed the work of that nature, and by it traffics divine commodities with men, and in addition was essential to veil the secrets and mystery of religion, policy, and philosophy from eyes unfit or unready to see them. Like the Platonists and Kabbalists before him, Bacon saw nature and the underlying forms of nature, their geometry, proportion, numerology, and signature as symbols of spiritual truths. Francis Bacon made use of several different kinds and types of cipher, some of them to sign various published works, issued outwardly under different names or pseudonyms, some of them to give signposts, messages, or teachings, some of them to provide geometric instructions, such as Masonic square and compass signatures, or a compass rose providing map directions, and some of them being a method of means by which to analyze and raise consciousness, and ultimately to know the metaphysical laws and intelligences of the universe. Take, for example, the King James Bible. When compared to that awful version that didn't allow for the right of kings, one of the changes that can be found are these chapter and verse changes. These seemingly slight changes produced a dramatic effect. As these two pictures illustrate, the structure of the Bible was slightly changed so that the two pillars of Boaz and Jachin, central in Freemasonry, were created with a 33 in the middle. In these two pillars, you have 4 sides, one going up and one going down. Each of these sides is comprised by a number of chapters equal to 3 times 3 times 33, or 297 chapters. Think of each chapter as representing a step up or down one of the sides of the pillar. Thinking of it this way, you have 297 steps going up each pillar and 297 steps going down. These 4 divisions are as follows. Pillar 1, left side, going up 297 chapters, from Genesis 1 to 1 Kings 6. Right side, going down 297 chapters, from 1 Kings 7 to Psalm 116. Psalm 117 is found directly in the middle of the Bible, representative of the Masonic square and compass. You'll find only in the King James Version is it comprised of 33 words, matching the value of Bacon. as well as the sacred number 33 of Freemasonry. Pillar 2, left side, goes up 297 chapters from Psalm 118 to Jonah 3. The right side goes down 297 chapters from Jonah 4 to Revelation 22. And there you have it, the Bible comprised of 1,189 chapters, with Psalm 117, a 33-word verse, bearing Bacon's mark exactly in the middle. You can find those same pillars, along with Daniel 12:4 in Latin, on the cover of Francis Bacon's New Atlantis, otherwise known as America, as shown on the stamp dedicated to LBJ. Knowledge is power.
Peter, we've talked a little bit about some of Bacon's philosophical works and some of the other works that he hasn't got his name to, but one of his greatest works is potentially the New Atlantis, and it was actually unfinished. Can you tell us something about that?
Yes, this New Atlantis is a utopia of how he saw his work, his Great Instauration could be put into operation in this mythical...
The Great Instauration, what's that?
Great Instauration is the name he gave to his philosophical work.
Right.
And that links to the rebuilding Solomon's Temple.
Yes. So the Great Instauration that Bacon's referring to really is this golden age that he talks of.
It's literally what the Rosicrucians called the renovation of all arts and sciences in order to usher in a golden age. It's a bit like finding the Ark of the Covenant when the temple was destroyed, when it came to rebuild it. They discovered the Ark of the Covenant hid in the vault under the ruins. And so this is a similar thing.
Yes.
And in this ark is books, and it's the book of the Bible, but there are other books that were not included in the Bible, other sacred books.
Yes.
And this is said to have been sent by St. Bartholomew. St. Bartholomew, the disciple of Jesus, he was the one to whom Jesus revealed the greatest of all the mysteries.
Right.
So you have the sense that the greatest of all the mysteries is there recorded.
Yeah.
The greatest of Jesus' teachings is there recorded in this ark, which is really implying that Bacon had knowledge of this. And this is what he was using. And we know Jesus' greatest teachings are all based on the Kabbalah. And we know Jesus' greatest teachings are all based on the Kabbalah, because that was the essence of the Hebrew wisdom. And all of Bacon's Great Instauration is designed Kabbalistically. It's kind of fiction, but at the same time it's not a total fiction. It's an allegory of looking at the past and looking into the future. So it's kind of prophetic. It's really about Christian teachings, because Bacon was an ardent Christian in the sense of really believing basic Christian teaching. God is love.
Yeah.
Not necessarily all the other dogma that goes with it, but
the core essence.
Yeah, the core essence. Love God and love each other. Be kind to each other. Look after the poor. Feed the hungry. Heal the sick. House the homeless, and so on like that. So his New Atlantis is based on a society that is actually doing that.
Yes.
That's what he's showing, society doing that. And it's in a land called Ben Salem. It's not in Atlantis, it's in another land, an island called Ben Salem. And he gives a kind of invented history of the past, and it shows that Atlantis is somewhere else. It's like, in those days, he and others identified the original Atlantis with North America.
Yeah.
So he goes into how at one time he had a golden age.
Yes.
A utopia. Golden age, and then it descended into corruption and so on, and started making war on other nations, and then this trading descended into wars.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he refers to the more going into spirituals to discover what Bacon calls the higher forms, which is a Platonic name for what in the Bible would be called angels. Angel, thought of God, the thought form.
Yeah.
Or divine idea. God's the hope, the intelligences. And but Bacon, can't use the word angel. So he uses the Platonic word forms, the higher forms. And you can see in New Atlantis these great scientists, if you like, they're philosophers of the House of Solomon, the House of 6 Days' Work. They study the heavenly things as well as the earthly things.
So it's physics and metaphysics.
It's physics and metaphysics, yeah.
Released 1 year after his death, the New Atlantis dons artwork of a minotaur-type creature with wings, holding a sickle alongside a time glass, representative of Saturn, the Roman god of time, harvest, wealth, and war, and would rule mankind during the Golden Age. It would also be the reason why 45 days from the 45th president's 55th birthday on Donald Trump's 54th, 322nd day of his life, Saturday Night Live, which sums out to 45, would release the following skit, name-dropping Skull and Bones Yale, as well as the leading world authority behind the coronavirus pandemic, Johns Hopkins University, the university behind the purge.
History has proven this over and over again. We are inherently a violent species. Wars, genocide, murder. The denial of our true selves is the problem. The purge not only contains societal violence to a single evening, but the countrywide catharsis creates psychological stability by letting us release the aggression we all have inside of us.
This is, of course, the purge that takes place on 3/22, while Johns Hopkins, coincidentally, sums out to Donald Trump's birthday.
You must be Dr. Levitt. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. You've come highly recommended.
Well, a couple of those recommendations came from Yale men, so I hope you won't hold that against me.
Now, as you know, we're becoming a teaching hospital. Sit, please.
I wish I could.
Our new chief resident will help lead that transition.
Well, at Johns Hopkins, I actually chaired the faculty committee that oversaw coordination between the school and the hospital.
It's also the reason why
Great Illustrations later gave to its philosophical work, and that links to
143,774 days after the New Atlantis had been released.
A 90-year-old woman becomes the first person in the UK to receive Pfizer's COVID vaccine.
All done. All done.
All done. In her cute British accent, Margaret Keenan turns 91 next week, and she called it the best early birthday present. The grandmother of 4 will receive a booster jab in 3 weeks, Brian.
Right, a booster jab. We have slang already for vaccines. The UK is the first to start mass vaccinations. Good job using our stuff. It plans to administer its first 800,000 doses to people over 80 years old and nursing home workers.
That's right. Meanwhile, as the United States waits for FDA approval, the president is expected to sign an executive order today ensuring all Americans have access to the vaccine before the government helps other nations.
The 90-year-old grandmother from Northern Ireland was given the jab in central England on Tuesday. Not long after, this British man became probably the world's second most famous person, named William Shakespeare. The 81-year-old became one of the first people to receive the vaccine.
Groundbreaking, I think. It could make a difference to our lives from now on, couldn't it? The start of changing our lives and our lifestyle.
William Shakespeare, along with the British Empire, would receive the North American vaccinations exactly 177 days from Donald Trump's 74th birthday, which, when using Francis Bacon's case-sensitive cipher, sums out to the mark of the beast. It also comes 9 days from Pope Francis's 84th birthday. 9, one of the devil's favorite numbers. Or 9, the amount of months it takes to develop a medical miracle.
When our nation was hit with the terrible pandemic, we produced not 1, but 2 vaccines with record-breaking speed, and more will quickly follow. They said it couldn't be done, but we did it. They called it a medical miracle, and that's what they're calling it right now, a medical miracle. Another administration would have taken 3, 4, 5, maybe even up to 10 years to develop a vaccine. We did it in 9 months. We grieve for every life lost, and we pledge in their memory to wipe out this horrible pandemic once and for all.
Coincidentally, there are 187 days between Donald Trump's birthday and Pope Francis's. Meanwhile, Pope Francis, along with Pope Demetrius, will go on to receive their vaccinations 9 days before Pope Francis's 84th birthday, or exactly 36 days, 36, a number whose integers sum out to 666, after William Shakespeare would receive his.
Pope Francis received the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine developed by Pfizer. He is expected to receive the second dose in 3 weeks. After receiving the vaccine doses, the Vatican launched a vaccination campaign. The Pope was one of the first people to receive the shot, but the moment was not caught on camera out of respect for his privacy. Benedict XVI's personal secretary, George Ganswein, assured that the Pope Emeritus would also receive the vaccine. The doses will be administered to all Vatican employees by medical personnel of the Directorate of Health and Hygiene. To store the vaccines, the Vatican acquired an ultra-low temperature freezer.
It also comes exactly 44 weeks from the day the WHO declared a pandemic, on March 11th, a date that looks a lot like the date the Pope would receive his vaccination, backwards, while 44 sums out to pure evil, the number of a man, Zionism, the Messiah, among others in Jewish, as well as 66 books, God of Israel, Lord God, Time and Space, Alien Invasion, Freemasonic, in Chaldean, which leads us back to our original question, is YHWH God? Filled with Illuminati, Rosicrucian, and Freemasonic symbols, the 1611 King James Bible dons the letters of Yahweh, otherwise known as the Tetragrammaton, summing out to 26 and matching the value of God. In Francis Bacon, this is its symbol. They are considered one and the same, found on top of the descending dove, thought by Christians to be the Holy Spirit. Unfortunately, hidden in plain sight, the descending dove, used by the Ordo Templi Orientis, as well as the Freemasons, symbolizes destruction. Is this God? From a June 24, 1996, Volume 147 Time Magazine article. The God I have found is common to Moses and Muhammad, to Buddha and Jesus. It is known to every mystic tradition. In mine, it is called the Tetragrammaton, the name so holy that those who know it dare not say it. It is what the Kabbalah calls ayin, nothingness, nothingness. It is the spirit, being, the all. Now, I know there is a consciousness that transcends science, a consciousness toward which our species is sputteringly evolving. Why do you think Jesus never referred to the Father as Yahweh or Jehovah? If you want to get real technical, Jesus' name isn't even Jesus, it's actually Yehoshua. Translated into Greek and English as Joshua. You can even find that name in the New Testament. So who is Jesus? Occult magic practitioners use the name of Jesus and Yahweh to invoke powerful spells. In fact, the King James Bible, as well as Shakespeare's plays, were used to usher in the new English language crafted by Francis Bacon. Actually, before Jesus, there was no J. It was invented just for the name. This more modernized English, as well as the new English alphabet, would work hand in hand with Francis Bacon's new gematria ciphers, as well as the soon-to-come calendar change. The Freemasons and Rosicrucians that put the King James Bible together claim that it was put together as a powerful spellbook that they use in ritual to this day, enciphered with Francis Bacon's gematria as well as mind control properties, which is why the King James Bible sums out to mind control as well as the Society of Jesus, and they leave trails of everything in gematria. And we can use it to string together events that seemingly look unrelated, as well as who's behind them. And they're not shy about telling us, you just have to be a little observant. Take, for example, 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
I've been waiting the whole
The death of George Floyd, the unarmed black man who lost his life after a Minneapolis police officer held his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
We continue to follow that breaking news in Minneapolis. We continue to follow that breaking news in Minneapolis. Powerful new video painting a picture of chaos and unrest in Minnesota. This is the roof of a building in the city with the messages, "Can you hear us?" and "R.I.P. George." As you can see, with the glow there's a fire raging right next to that rooftop. This is not the only fire burning in the city tonight, not by a long shot. The most prominent fire certainly is where protesters stormed the 3rd Police Precinct, where the officers involved in George Floyd's death used to work, and set fire to that. It is currently burning to the ground. No firefighters on scene, no police on scene. We'll continue to keep you posted.
How many times would you consider a coincidence? A coincidence? George Perry Floyd, who sums out to 201, would die exactly 201 weeks from.
Another big story here in France. That's the death of a young man during his arrest back on July the 19th. This actually happened in a Parisian suburb.
That young man was Adama Traoré, and he died on July the 19th in Beaumont-sur-Oise, which is sort of near Paris. And his family have insisted since his death that he died because of a blunder by police in police custody. Now, as you might recall, Traoré's death triggered days of protests and accusations of police brutality, racial profiling. Well, now Libération reports that in this article entitled "The Truth Suffocated or Stifled," a play on words, that two separate autopsies carried out on Traoré's body actually revealed that he died of asphyxiation.
The death of Adama Traoré would come exactly 156 days from recipient of the most excellent order of the British Empire, Emmanuel Macron's 39th birthday. He would die on the 201st day of the year, 201 weeks from the death of George Floyd, as well as 3 years and 3 months from Event 201. Meanwhile, his American counterpart, George Floyd, who would die 1,221 days from.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
George Floyd would die 221 days from the same global pandemic exercise, as well as 76 days from the day the WHO would declare a pandemic, which sums out to the New World Order, the Great Insurrection, and the mastermind behind it all, Sir Francis Bacon. 8 minutes and 46 seconds also sums out to May 23rd, 2017, a date that would come 156 weeks and 6 days from the death of George Floyd.
Through persecution, oppression, death, and destruction, the Jewish people have persevered. They have thrived. They've become so successful in so many places. And they have enlightened the world. The Star of David waves proudly above this cherished land, with resolve to confront evil wherever it threatens. We ask God to give us the strength, wisdom, and courage to chart the righteous path.
8 minutes and 46 seconds also sums out to a week to remember. And what a week that was.
My big foreign trip. That's what Donald Trump is calling it. This hour, we're going to see the president leave for his first overseas trip as commander-in-chief. This morning, the president tweeting he'll protect American interests. But how will other world leaders receive him and his policies?
This trip is no doubt a welcome relief from the drama engulfing the Trump administration in recent days. Instead of facing those difficult questions about the Russia investigation and firing his FBI director, the president is being treated like royalty by the Saudi royal family. Trumpets announced the arrival of President and Mrs. Trump in Saudi Arabia Saturday, marking his first foreign trip as commander-in-chief. The red carpet was literally rolled out for the first couple. They were met by King Salman and other high-level Saudi officials. The lavish welcome continued on the way to the Saudi royal court. American and Saudi flags lined the streets of Riyadh, and men on horseback surrounded the president's motorcade. The pageantry continued inside the royal court, where members of the Trump administration took part in a traditional sword dance. King Salman also presented Trump with a gilded necklace and medal.
The collar of Abdulaziz Al Saud is what it's called, and it's the nation's highest honor.
But the day's real business was the signing of a $110 billion arms deal between the two countries.
Tremendous investments into the United States, and our military community is very happy, and we want to thank you and Saudi Arabia about hundreds of billions of dollars of investments into the United States and jobs.
As a content developer, we develop videos, infographics, and motion graphics to combat extremist content.
On May 22nd, 2017, Donald Trump will become the first sitting U.S. president to visit the Temple Wall in Jerusalem.
This is meant to be a very private moment. He's going to put his hand there, this here. It's private, but of course, if you're an American president, very little is private. You wonder what's going through his mind. The man who said he wants to make the ultimate deal, and as part of that, he was initially he was very clear that he wanted to move the American embassy to Jerusalem. So many American presidents said they would do it. None of them did it. Now he's putting in his prayer into the crack in the wall. A private prayer. And Arab leaders told him that to move the embassy would be very explosive.
Interesting choice of words. The same day, the 45th U.S. president would make history by touching the Jerusalem temple walls. It would be the same day.
Oh my God. What's going on? What's happening? What's going on? Oh my God!
The bombing at an Ariana Grande concert at Manchester Arena in 2017 claimed the lives of 23 people and injured hundreds more.
I extend my deepest condolences to those so terribly injured in this terrorist attack, and to the many killed and the families, so many families, of the victims. We stand in absolute solidarity with the people of the United Kingdom. So many young, beautiful, innocent people living and enjoying their lives murdered by evil losers in life. I won't call them monsters because they would like that term. They would think that's a great name. I will call them from now on losers, because that's what they are. They're losers. And we'll have more of them. But they're losers. Just remember that. In this spirit of hope, we come to Bethlehem, asking God for a more peaceful, safe, and far more tolerant world for all of us. I am truly hopeful that America can help Israel and the Palestinians forge peace and bring new hope to the region and its people. I also firmly believe that if Israel and the Palestinians can make peace, it will begin a process of peace all throughout the Middle East, and that would be an amazing accomplishment. Thank you very much.
And TRT World correspondent Nicole Johnston joins us now live from occupied East Jerusalem. Hi, Nicole. Trump has repeated his commitment to brokering a peace deal here, but has anything, in your opinion, of substance happened indicating real progress?
No, not yet. We haven't had any substance. He's made a series of statements. They've been quite similar. His most significant speech is still to come. In another couple of hours, he'll be speaking at the Israel Museum. The main message that we heard from Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas was to reiterate the Palestinian position of a two-state solution based on the 1967 borders. President Trump spent only a brief time in Bethlehem, around about 1 hour. He didn't visit the holiest site there, the Church of the Nativity. But here's a little bit of detail about how life is for Palestinians living under military occupation in the West Bank, in Bethlehem.
Thank you, Mr. President. This adds to a historic visit. You are the first American president who chose to include Israel on his first foreign trip. You're the first president in office to visit the Western Wall. We were so deeply moved to see that picture of you touching the stones of the wall. And may I say, we were deeply moved to see First Lady Melania Trump touching the stone of that wall. And equally moved when we saw your daughter Ivanka and your son-in-law Jared do the same.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a sign of affection and esteem, and this is amazing. We're looking at the leader of the free world, the leader of the Catholic Church, who share so many mutual interests and who are both believers. These are men of God, and they are recognizing each other, and the gifts are always in all cultures, but in Christianity, especially a gift is a sign of your esteem that you offer to your fellow man.
A medallion also related to peace is among the gift. What do you believe we're looking at here?
That looks like the medallion, and the Pope is explaining. The Pope does like giving artistic gifts which express some of the sentiments that he's trying to convey. And certainly world peace as a subject is something that is at the heart of the Catholic Church's message. And the United States efforts, our military exists precisely to guarantee and safeguard the peace. So Pope Francis is giving us what we as Christians always need, is a reminder that we have to suppress violent instincts and we have to develop love of neighbor.
I'm honored to be here with members of an alliance that has promoted safety and peace across the world. I have been very, very direct with Secretary Stoltenberg and members of the alliance in saying that NATO members must finally contribute their fair share and meet their financial obligations. But 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense. This is not fair to the people and taxpayers of the United States. And many of these nations owe massive amounts of money from past years. We have to make up for the many years lost. 2% is the bare minimum for confronting today's very real and very vicious threats.
Thank you. Thank you. And happening now, President Trump is at the G7 summit of wealthy nations in Sicily, Italy. These are live pictures of one of the helicopters transporting some of the folks there. Shortly after arriving at the summit, President Trump tweeted that he is getting ready to discuss economic growth, terrorism, and security. Now, meantime, the French president says his top priorities are climate change and trade. During a meeting with Japan's Prime Minister, Trump talked about North Korea, saying, quote, "It's a big problem and will be solved, and you can bet on that."
So President Trump is back now at the White House today, this returning home last night after his first foreign trip overseas, 9 days away in Saudi Arabia, Israel, Brussels, the Vatican, and Italy.
A week to remember indeed. So how does gematria work? It's as easy as A equals 1, B equals 2, and C equals 3, but it gets more complex than that. Take, for example, 1 plus 2. It equals 3. But it also sums out to 29, which is the value of 3. Now there's a lot of different ciphers, and each one of them holds keys. Here's one in English Sumerian. If you write out 888, which coincidentally is the value of Donald J. Trump in English Sumerian, times 2, you get the value of 888 times 2.
1776.
The year the Bavarian Illuminati was founded, exactly 9 weeks, 9 considered by some to be Satan's favorite number.
Michelle Bachmann said if you turn it upside down and take a closer look, it's actually the devil's in the details, the 666 plan.
The United States would declare independence exactly 9 weeks after the Bavarian Illuminati was founded, on July 2nd, 1776, but we'll get to that one later. We're also going to be talking about coincidence, something that the Founding Fathers of America didn't believe in. Actually, quite the opposite. They believed in an ancient secret destiny for America.
When our founders declared a new order of the ages, when soldiers died in wave upon wave for a union based on liberty, when citizens marched in peaceful outrage under the banner Freedom Now, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled. History has an ebb and flow of justice, but history also has a visible direction set by liberty and the author of liberty.
If you do believe in coincidence, let me ask you, how many times would you consider a coincidence a coincidence? Coincidence?
Professor Jay Kohler at the Northwestern School of Law in Chicago is an expert on probability.
Coincidence is a striking co-occurrence of events that appear to be meaningfully related, but in fact are related only by chance.
Coincidences seem to fascinate us all, especially when they involve unlikely characters like Thomas Jefferson here. When Jefferson and John Adams signed the Declaration of Independence, they had no idea that they would one day be linked by a very freaky coincidence.
These two guys, both presidents of the United States, both died on the same day, July 4th. Not just any July 4th, but the exact 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And that was the beginning of my questioning whether there was something more to coincidence than just coincidence.
Or, as he calls them, God winks.
A God wink is one of those little coincidences that makes you say two things. Wow, what are the odds of that? And I wonder, is that coincidence evidence of divine origin?
Rushnell's answer, a resounding yes.
So there's some research to suggest that a feeling of destiny can be good for you mentally.
But even if it is reassuring, it is not reality, according to science writer Matt Hudson, who says that while coincidences are not destiny, they are destined to happen, thanks to something called the law of truly large numbers.
It's a term that a couple of mathematicians came up with to describe this idea that with a large enough sample of events, any outrageous thing is likely to happen. Another way of thinking about it is if you flip a coin long enough, eventually you'll get 10 heads in a row, and the universe flips a lot of coins.
All those coin flips add up to a simple mathematical answer for even the weirdest coincidences, like this one.
William Regan says he played the numbers on a fluke.
The New York State Lottery on the first anniversary of 9/11. You know what the winning numbers were?
I assume it was,
Take a guess.
I assume it was 911.
Right.
Yeah. In a world where there are lots of people and lots of events happening to lots of people every day, you're going to come across a co-occurrence of events that seems to be extremely unlikely.
So when two former presidents died on the same day, it wasn't mystical, just mathematical, though we tend to make these things mystical by ignoring annoying little details.
So when people were comparing Jefferson and Adams, there were lots of things they looked for that they didn't find. Were their wives born on the same day? No, scratch that. Did they have the same number of kids? No, scratch that. Did they name their kids the same thing? No. And the selection fallacy is to select out the interesting parts.
But what about the power of God winks or the force of destiny? Science writer Matt Hudson.
I can't rule it out, just as I can't rule out unicorns, but there's no strong evidence for unicorns.
Wow, you really are a killjoy, aren't you?
It's my job. I'm a science writer.
Mathematicians will always have an answer for everything because they have to. And I put more faith in a grand designer than I do in accidents happening numerically.
Do you think it's a coincidence they forgot to mention the third president that died on the 4th of July? James Monroe, the 5th U.S. president, would die exactly 5 years or 1,826 days after the second and third president would die on the 4th of July of 1826. Coincidence? Maybe. Meanwhile, the value of the 3 U.S. presidents who would die on the 4th of July matched the value of the United States of America. And while Thomas Jefferson and John Adams would die exactly 9,966 weeks from July 4th, 2017, James Monroe would die 2,232 months before that same day, 2,232, matching the value of July 4th, 2017, as well as the man behind the curtain in reality television president. And impossible coincidences, but I'll let you be the judge. July 4th, 2017 would be Donald Trump's first 4th of July in office.
And the home of the brave.
What a fantastic voice. Wow. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. The rain stopped just as we came out. I don't know what that means, but it's not bad. And happy 4th of July. Great honor to have you with us. Melania and I truly appreciate and celebrate America's independence with those who courageously defend our country.
I don't believe in coincidence, and whether you believe in the Bible or not, they're either using the book as a blueprint or the prophecies are fulfilling. I'll leave you to be the judge of that. But it sure does look like we are living in the biblical end of days. I personally believe the government has a hidden agenda. It was founded by Jesuits, Zionists, Freemasons.
In the name of the great architect of the universe, to invoke his continued blessing, which he has bestowed upon our country and its people.
It was founded by Jesuits, Zionists, Freemasons, also known as the Illuminati, as a tribute to Liberty, the goddess of reason, Isis, Venus, the whore, the Virgin Mary, the divine feminine, or Shekinah, Babylon, her number 156.
Pope Leo, the man you see there, was very, very influential in articulating an argument that Catholics were actually at the heart of the building. They helped build America as a Christian nation.
The return is for all of God's people, every denomination. And on board is everybody from Pat Robertson.
We have hundreds of denominations. No, you don't have to belong to one of them to get saved. And the Bible says, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. But it doesn't say you have to be a Presbyterian, a Baptist, a Pentecostal, a Catholic, or a Lutheran, or Methodist, or any of these others.
In this difficult time, we turn to the Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of the Church and Queen of Peace, for all those who are affected in any way by this pandemic. As we renew the consecration of our country and of ourselves to the Mother of God, we implore her maternal care for her children.
This is the shape of the letter Shin, Hebrew alphabet Shin. Very interesting letter in the language. It's the first letter in the word Shaddai, the first letter in the word Shalom, first letter in the word Shekinah, which is the name of the feminine aspect of God.
May the Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace. Peace in our families, peace across this land, and dare I ask, O Lord, peace even in this chamber, now and evermore. We ask it in the name of the monotheistic God, Brahma, and God known by many names, by many different faiths. A man and a woman.
We have a lot to go over. I'll see you soon. And friends, if you find any value in any of my work, would you consider donating to my PayPal so that I can continue bringing you more? Thanks.